Hey, welcome everybody. So, triathlon bike, the geeky techie stuff on the triathlon bike 103. So, Coach Coral and myself are going to try to disseminate a bunch of stuff that you need to know. And of course, the website www.bravingkarma.com/triathlon bike is where you need to go. We're going to have all these videos there, and we're going to try to plunk there in some tire changing, cleaning your bike videos, all of this stuff, good resources in one spot. Okay. Did you like how I used smart words and not so smart words all together?
And do note, we already have the recordings of 101, 102, and I think, BK, you've also got a super awesome how to change a bike tire video.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where I only drew the camera dose. Okay, perfect.
Not too bad.
I know,
cool.
Right?
So, what are we chatting about today? We've got some ton of geeky stuff. So if you want to learn bike technical stuff, you are in the right place. So you want to go ahead and kick us off, Bonnie?
Yeah.
I think our first order of business is bike fit.
Bike fit, yes. Bike fit is critical. Critical. You're spending a ton of time on your lady parts on the bike fit, on the bike, right? A fit is probably going to cost you generally around 200, 250. Okay. These are the things that you need to know if you are you're going to get a good bike fit. So first of all, I usually tell people when you go into a bike shop, there's going to be good bike shops and there's going to be not so good bike shops. If you're going to stay in triathlon, if you're going to buy a $3,000 to $5,000 bike, you need a good bike shop that you can go in and ask questions and take your trusted bike there and them take care of it and do what you need and listen to you. And then if you have questions, talk to you like you're a female but not stupid. Okay. So bike shops, if you go in there and you're asking them questions and they're listening to you and actually looking at your eyes and they give you some sort of feedback that actually makes sense to you, that's you're on your path to having a good bike shop. Unfortunately, there's a lot of bike shops, and even in my experience, that aren't as useful as they need to be. So a good bike fit, it's going to cost you some money, like $200, $250. And what you're going to get is here's what they should do. They should ask you questions on what you're going to be doing. Either just sprint stuff, half Ironman, it all matters. They should ask you if you have injuries, if you have problems with your back, if you've had an injured hamstring, problems with your knees, problems with your shoulders. All of these things should be taken into account. Problems with your neck. Like if you have cervical vertebrae issues, getting a tri bike might not be the best thing. Getting a road bike might be better just because of the geometry and how much stress you're going to put on your neck. All of these things a bike shop should be able to talk to you about. Distance wise, how aggressive the bike fit is going to be. Longer distances, half Ironman, you want to be more comfortable than more aggressive, at least for the first year out. And so your bike fit can kind of change based on how long you've been doing triathlon, how you have progressed into a better biker, maybe strength and flexibility has changed a little bit, etc. So the bike fit will do that. They should ask you all these questions. They should test range of motion. They should test how long your hamstrings are. They should test kind of how your back works with stuff like that. They should give you data back, okay? Meaning like if you're doing a retool bike fit, that's more of a computerized bike fit, or if they're doing body geometry, which is a different type of bike fit. Some people are old school and use measuring things. Good Lord, I'm an engineer, right?
Goniometer? Angles and stuff.
Yeah, even a string with a weight on it and like to measure angles. Some people do it completely old school like that and just taking some measurements. But at the end of the day, they should somehow give you either a computer file or a piece of paper or something that tells you what the links are of everything. Okay. My bike shop, nice bike shop, they'll even mark my stuff for me. So on your seat post, they'll put a mark on there. So if I need to put my bike in a bike box, I know where to put the seat. They actually don't use tape, they use a silver Sharpie. So that's included. And then really what else should be included is for you to go back and check the fit. If you're buying a new bike, along with that would be check some of the cabling and stuff like that, because your cables stretch from a new bike or a new cable for some use, and then you might need to readjust that. So going back and checking how's things going should be included in that as well. So did I miss anything?
Not necessarily. You did mention that with a bike fit, you are going to run into a little bit of money, but there truly is a cost benefit in this case in the long run. Having an improper bike fit, I mean, you're talking about putting hundreds of miles potentially on your bike over the course of a season, or even if you're doing some long course stuff within the course of a week. Just being in that sort of fixed position, if it's on point, you are good to go. If you have a bike fit that's kind of off or you haven't been fitted properly, you're potentially running into some, kind of biomechanical issues, some overuse, stress, etc., that could potentially lead to some pretty expensive body rehab down the line. So dropping a couple $100 up front, that's kind of the typical price point that you're looking at, but it is worth every penny in the long run to make sure that you are avoiding any use, type injuries from having an improper fit.
Yeah, so. A lot of times I hear people that, hey, the lady parts are really suffering or my back's really hurting and whatnot. Sometimes we don't need to go through 3 or 4 different $200 saddles. Sometimes it's a bike fit issue. And then another reason why you want to invest the money is you can get performance out of a good bike fit. If the geometry is wrong and maybe you're overusing one versus the other, you'll lose performance being in a wrong bike fit. So that, I don't know which is more important. Lady parts being happy, no injuries coming up, and then performance. Just saying.
I'm personally a fan of comfort over performance most any day, but.
All right. Okay.
Either way, it's worth it. It's totally worth it.
Definitely. So, does anybody have any questions on that?
I do want to say, I noticed we've got a couple more people that have logged in since we started a few moments ago. Super excited you guys are here. If you are new to Zoom, the platform that we use, know that you can open up the chat pod by scrolling over the bottom part of the screen. You should see a little chat icon pop up. Click on that, and you can actually ask us questions if we're rambling or you want to kind of have us backtrack on something. Don't hesitate. We'll keep an eye on it.
Okay, so the question is, I did a 10-miler and my little finger went numb. Is that something that is bike related? So what we're talking about is here. So these parts of your hand are here, radial nerve related, but then it also goes up to see 3 or 4 here. Okay. And then these parts of your hands, ulnar nerve back here, or on like tennis elbow type stuff. And then they are associated with cervical vertebrae, like one down from there. I'm not a chiropractor, so I can't get that perfectly right. The point is that it could be bike fit related because you're resting this part of your arm on a train on your aero pads. So I would ask you, were you in aero? And then that can be where the bars are. That's why I like to encourage people to buy the Profile Design aero bars that they adjust this way and this way, and then the pads actually adjust this way as well, and they're like no more expensive than any others, so you get some fine tuning there as well. But if you're too far forward with your bike fit, you can end up too 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 close to here for sakes. But it could also be tight shoulder, some tight neck issues and whatnot, so it's kind of hard to tell. So not resting on, okay, that still could be how you're gripping. If you're putting a lot of pressure here on your bike handlebars, that can be that. So what I would say is go do some yoga eagle arms. Thank you. Namaste. See if that helps. It's awesome. See if that helps, and see if you're tight up in here, and if you have shoulder pain either up and through here and stuff like that. But that's a kind of it's a good question, but it's a big one. Okay. Yo.
Cool. So on to one of my favorite topics, gearing. I know that especially getting into tries from, very little experience with bike gears, it can be a little bit intimidating. Just kind of take a little while to work into it. But, learning how to use your bike gears is just an invaluable skill to just develop a comfort, develop a feel for them, and not getting frustrated when you're first getting accustomed to the sport. It takes time. And bike to bike, it's going to be a little different. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about gear ratios, switching gears, and a couple different schools of thought. Should you be pushing a big gear or kind of pushing a little smaller gear at a higher, what we call cadence, so your number of revolutions per minute while you're riding your bike. So, a lot of it depends on what type of rider you are. And this is my personal philosophy. Bonnie may have some differing thoughts on that, and that's okay. But, typically for a longer distance triathlon, you're going to be trying to conserve your energy and just really focusing on pedaling efficiency. And so for something like a half or a full Ironman, you're going to stay at a little bit lower output, a little bit lower heart rate, and just really try to get your pedaling efficiency, keep your cadence high, and you're going to push a little bit lower gear. You're not going to be a big gear smasher. In the end, if you're doing something like that, just pushing a really high gear, you're just going to end up trashing your legs and have nothing left for the run. If you're doing something a little bit shorter, sprint, Olympic distance triathlon, where you're looking at, an hour, 2 hours-ish on the bike, you can probably, be a little bit safer, pushing a little bit higher gear through a shorter amount of time and still have enough to finish that 5K, 10K. So it really depends on Bonnie's giving me looks. No, you don't think so? This is my personal philosophy, but.
I do, but I had one thing I wanted to add, so keep going.
You want to interject? Go for it.
Um, I learned this years ago when I spent a lot of time in somebody's basement. There was no rub the lotion on the legs, but we did have like 10 CompuTrainers on the, that whole screen thing, and we were training with power. And I don't want to get into that conversation. That's not why I'm bringing this up. However, training with power, I did learn some very invaluable things, and I completely agree with you, first of all. When you learn that everybody has kind of like this optimal RPM, and there is a range. Like, what is it? I say like 85 to 95, right? But everybody has this optimal range, and it's based on biomechanics and stuff. Assuming this one thing, that you've put in the work and that you are using your glutes and hamstrings along with your quad as well. That's kind of the point in learning how to gear better. When you have the efficiency, the high cadence stuff, learning how to not bounce around and stuff like that. I think that that's really invaluable, and one thing that people kind of miss, that whole backside thing. That's all I wanted to say. I think you're spot on. Woo-hoo.
Woo! Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And just kind of figuring out where you're at. So, as far as looking at, what type of gear ratios you're going to be looking at when you're climbing versus riding a flat. Riding a flat's pretty straightforward unless you've got some major wind that you're looking at. You might have some causeways, like if you're racing in Florida. So knowing how to shift gears accordingly, definitely become familiar with that. However, if you live in a hilly area or you're going to be racing on a hilly course, practicing is so crucial. I will say, just from like a personal story, I did a very hilly course, a very hilly race last year, and ended up only being able to train on flats. And so knowing that going in, I actually got a different rear cassette. So your back gearing, you can actually buy cassettes that have different number of teeth on them. So the more teeth on the rear gear, the easier it's going to be to climb hills. Kind of gives you that being downshift, downshift, downshift. So, knowing if you're going into a really hilly course, you may want to look at a cassette, and these numbers may not mean much right now, but something with a granny gear of like 28 teeth, even 32, that can be the difference between kind of eking your way up the hill and falling over. So if you are going into something that's got a lot of climbing, going to be kind of outside your comfort zone than what you're used to, I would definitely recommend going in and talking to your mechanic at your trusted bike shop and just kind of seeing their thoughts and maybe having a discussion about swapping out your cassette on the back. I know that definitely made my race a lot more manageable last year, coming from Pancake Flat, Central Illinois.
Can I interject something real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
This is another reason why your bike shop is really important. And if you have a coach, hopefully that they know what they're doing with this aspect. I've heard a lot of times where someone will go in and you end up needing to replace like 50 billion parts because the bike shop, road cyclists can be pretty like off the chain geeky. And sometimes they're not all that great with finding middle ground, right? Just doing kind of like a B job instead of A plus plus job, because there are limitations to what can be done based on gearing, based on kind of your range, your derailleurs. They only have certain amount of movement, so you only have certain amount of things that you can do without totally changing everything up. So if you have a hopefully a coach or tri club or somebody that knows this stuff, I would kind of ask them, someone's got their head on straight and can educate you a little bit, because sometimes you need to go into these bike shops with a little bit of smarts, unfortunately. But I have found in my experience, and then listening to what some of my athletes have been saying, and this bike shop said they need to do da 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 da, and I'm like, oh, you're talking to a road cyclist that, I don't know, he must be an engineer and whatever.
Yeah, I think most, if you're in triathlon long enough, you'll probably creep into a bike shop that gives you that, at least some sort of experience like that. Just the final thing that I wanted to add, I have definitely talked to people where they go, I only cycle in, 85 to 90 RPM, and that's it. Okay, yeah, that is probably going to be your most efficient cadence. However, it is very important because you end up developing and recruiting different muscles. If you are pushing kind of a stronger gear, or rather a stronger resistance, you may need to, let me back up a second. For instance, if you are climbing a very, very steep hill, you might be in a low gear, but you're still having to exert a lot of power. You may have to drop outside of that or below that, ideal cadence. It might be closer to 60 to 65 RPM. And, if you haven't practiced that and you're in a race, your body's going to, maybe go like, whoa, what are we doing? So, it is important in your training sessions to have developed or at least practiced a wide range of cadences at different resistances so that you are prepared for really whatever a race course might throw your way. Fine, do you have anything to add as far as gearing and cadence goes?
Yeah, don't feel like this is overwhelming. You just need to practice on it, and you really do need to practice on it. If you've signed up for a hilly race, like we usually do this, right? Oh, I'm going to go do this, and then you get into the know somewhere along the way, and you're like, oh, this race has 4,000 feet of climbing. Oh, right? Um, you really will, and I think you're like this too, Carl. When I'm bike riding, and this is where the tri bike has an advantage too, because generally tri bikes out on your aero bars, the shifters are up here versus a road bike. So if you're sitting in aero, you actually have to come up and flick the thingy, right, to change. But you'll get an intuitive feel if you do it enough. And like we were training for Wisconsin, which is a notoriously hilly bike ride. We found a 5-mile stretch and we were doing loops on it for 100 miles. Okay. Do what you have to, for reals, but you'll get the feel for when you need to shift. You'll start to get intuitively to it, and after a while it's like no big deal. Okay. It'll be just in the back of your head, and you'll get into where you are adding nutrition in with that and stuff like that. The other thing that I would say is the gearing and stuff like that, and the reason why you need to practice is safety, because sometimes you're going to be going up a hill and you're going to be in that granny gear, and you're going to be needing to tell yourself, I'm not stopping, I'm not stopping, I'm not quitting, I'm not quitting, I'm not quitting. And you'll be like, okay, legs, shut up, right? But there will be times where you will need to decide, I'm going to walk up it. You need to decide that and not fall over. Because if you're in the middle of that hill and then you decide it, your chances of falling over are pretty high. So practice the gearing. Practice.
One last thing. This is like a mechanic's worst nightmare. Definitely be cognizant of the fact that your chain is, say this is your, you've got your big chain ring in the front and your little rear cassette in the back. Your chain can only withstand so much strain before bad things start to happen. So, just be cautious. One, that you're not what they call cross chaining. So if you're in your really big chain ring on the back and your smallest chain ring, or your biggest chain ring in the front and your smallest chain ring in the back, you're going to start getting some angling. That's just not very healthy for your chain. It causes a lot of wear and tear. And the other thing is too, if you're climbing up a pretty steep incline, just, I'm not saying baby your gears, but definitely make sure that you are pedaling at a very smooth cadence, as smooth as possible when you're shifting, because otherwise you start kind of getting jerky, and that can also lead to a chain drop, possibly a busted chain. You hope you don't have to deal with that. And so, if you do drop a chain, just knowing how to get it back on. I'm going to make a note, Bonnie. That's a video we need to do as well. So I'll post a clip to kind of our biking homepage video as well on how to do that. So just be cognizant of that as well, to take care of your gears, and they will love you back.
I know this can be sort of overwhelming, but this is triathlon. This is why you get the tat, why you get the label BA. And the thing is you have to learn this. My Wisconsin ride, there's something wrong with my bike, and the dude set the back derailleur to the limiter too long. So I was shifting. What I was used to shifting with would be too far, and I dropped my chain. I dropped my chain in Wisconsin 5 freaking times, and not when I was going like smoothly, when I was going up a hill. So I got some practice on, getting off in a graceful manner without wrecking anybody else. But this is part of it, because you don't want to DNF a race because you didn't know how to change your tire, or you didn't know how to manage this stuff. It can be overwhelming, but this is why we're doing this stuff for you guys, so you can learn it and practice it. So pony up.
Speaking of techie things, tires, changing tires. Are there different types of tires?
Tires. Yes.
Tires.
Okay. All right. So, tires. You need to make sure you buy the right tire for the size of bike wheel you have. I prefer gator skins. They're a little bit more expensive, but they last a lot longer, and they prevent flats. They're thicker and whatnot. You can race with them. You can put them on your race wheels if you so choose. And then you generally should have, optimally, if you have either race wheels or maybe a spare back tire, you would want a dedicated tire for your trainer, because trainers tear the snot out of tires. They round off the back of it. So like in a winter time, you're going to go through a tire. And then so it's pretty risky if you were, go out and use a trainer tire on your bike. And it's probably no big deal. You'll just be at risk for getting flats or blowouts, which is fine. You'll get practice changing your tire, but do not go to a race with your trainer tire. Okay. Don't do that. So, your trainer tires, you do need to air them up. And you do need to understand that trainers, especially the non-smart trainers, they are just on resistance. So that means heat. So you can have trainer tires while you're biking pop, but I don't mean pop. I mean sort of like explode. Like they're getting hot, and so hot air expands. So it's a mini like bike explosion, bike tire explosion. It can be scary. It's no big deal, right? Just kind of know that, but know that you do need to monitor. And I would do both. Sounds like a gunshot. Yes. No big deal. We had that happen in that copy trainer basement, and yeah, that was fun. So the tire conversation really isn't that complicated. Just know that trainer tires kind of need to be trainer tires. and that I race in gator skins to minimize the potential for getting flats. And the other thing that I do is I pay attention to where I'm biking. Okay. I don't bike through a bunch of trash. And if you have a regular route that's pretty junked up, maybe find a cleaner route or whatnot. So anything that I forgot, Coral?
I mean, just, it's kind of just a regular bike maintenance tip. If you're coming back from a ride, just double check to make sure there's no crud embedded in your tire. That can make them last a lot longer, because even a small nick, if there's something in there and you ride on it, that can become a larger issue, and you'll just have to end up changing your tire. If you catch and kind of pull those things out early, it can make your tire life a bit longer. So, yeah.
Two tidbits on tires. You can pick up, if you like the other day I ran out of water and I was going down someone's driveway to borrow water from their well, and I noticed this. I picked up a rock, and the rock wedged itself in between my bike tire and the frame of the bike. Just pay attention to what the surface is. And then sometimes I'm pretty picky about my bike. I'll carry my bike through grass and stuff. Like I just did Boulder half Ironman, and I carried my bike from the grassy parking lot all the way to pavement. So, it don't take a lot of risks with your tires and stuff like that, because it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yo.
Sweet.
Yo,
so
yo.
With tire damage and tube damage just comes the necessity of knowing how to change these things as they come up. So hands down, my personal philosophy is like the number one repair that you should know how to do, other than putting your chain back on your bike, is knowing how to replace a tube. So we've got a couple videos. Again, we'll link to them. I think one is actually already posted on the TriBike 10 everything site. So definitely check that out. Get proficient, get a glass of wine, sit down with your tire, and just take it on, off till it's second nature. So forgot my tubes to show the different types of valve stems. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about was okay, great. I think Bonnie's going to save the day. So there are two different types of valves that come on tubes. The first one is you'll see it more on a mountain bike. You'll also find them on your car tires. Those are Schrader valves, and they're kind of fat and rubberized, and they've got a little plastic cap that sits on top. I'm talking about Schrader valves right now. So those are typically going to be on a tire that requires a lower tire pressure, like I said, like a mountain bike.
Your car tire.
And your car tire, yes. And for the record, not like I've ever tried it, but you can actually use your bike pump to inflate a Schrader valve on your car in a pinch.
I think you need a video of that.
It's a really good arm workout, actually, because it takes like 4 times as long. Than inflating like 20 times longer, than inflating your road bike tires. Okay, so Bonnie is holding up, this is called a Presta valve, and you'll typically find these on your tubes that require a little bit higher PSI. So they've got that nice little metal mechanism. Sometimes they'll have that little screw on there. That just helps the valve sit correctly against your rim. Not all Presta valves will have those.
This is not important, really. Okay, don't stress about this. This is not important, and this isn't either.
No. I honestly ditch my caps.
This, don't bend this part, people. Okay. That one's important, but okay.
Yep. So essentially you just unscrew it and then you press it, the air will come out, it allows the air in. What was I going to say? Yes. Most pumps these days will have way back when, 15, 20 years ago, you would have to use a different fitting on your pump for the different types of valve stems. However, somebody got smart and invented one that's interchangeable between the two. So if you go and buy a pump right now, more likely than not, you're just going to be good to go, no matter what valve stem you put your bike pump on. Words are hard. So Bonnie, you want to chat a little about, I talked a little bit about tire pressure. What is the recommended PSI? Thoughts?
This is kind of all over the place. 100, okay? 95, 100. If you're a little bit lighter, you can go a little bit more, a little bit heavier, go a little bit less. We're talking 5 PSI more or less, okay?
If you're lighter, you can go lower. If you're heavier, you can go higher, right?
Yes, sorry. I had too much sun yesterday. Okay.
Being awesome.
Dude.
If you haven't seen the picture of Bonnie in her cape on the run course of Ironman 70.3 Boulder, you should go check it out.
And no
Pretty
chafe.
awesome. And no chafe. So, yeah. Typically the max PSI on your road bike is going to be 120. Definitely double check. You can look on the side of your bike tire and it will have the minimum and the maximum PSI printed right on the sidewall. So definitely double check that. Yes.
Tires are meant to be put on in a certain direction too. There's little arrows, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yes. Oh, yo. People get geeky on this, okay? Air up your tires in the morning. Don't freak out about it the day before a race, okay? Just do like you train, yo, okay? Air up your tires, take your bike pump to the race, or there are going to be 1,000,000,001 air pumps there. And most triathletes are pretty nice, and they will let you borrow theirs, okay? Air up your tires right before you get on. Don't futz around with letting stuff out. Da 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 da. Don't need to do all of that. Okay? Okay.
So while we're talking about everyone's favorite topic, tires, there are, once you start getting into race wheels, like the ones behind me, typically you're looking at some sort of carbon on your race wheel, and there are 2 main types of tires that will go on your race wheel. The first one is clincher, and the clinchers, it operates basically like your regular. Bonnie, have you got a clincher or tubular there?
Clincher.
Yay! So clinch, huh?
With no tire.
With no tire. So Bonnie, you want to show us the rim on that one real quick? Okay, hold it up. Close it forward. Yay! Okay, so Bonnie is holding up a clincher wheel, and so this will accommodate any regular road tire, just like your regular. Yep. And regular tube, just like a normal training wheel or regular road wheel. And personally, this is my preferred wheel to go to. There's just a lot less likelihood that you're going to be taken out of a race due to a tire failure, and we'll explain why here in just a second. Yes, definitely definitely get a clincher, in my humble opinion. So the second type that you don't want is a tubular. And essentially a tubular, instead of having the tire that locks in around the rim with a tube inside without having, it's more of an all-in-one, so to speak. And there's actually a glue that affixes the tire tube combo to the outside rim. I mean, it's the best way I know how to explain it. But, yeah. So
you have to do it perfectly. Straight.
Yeah. So if you don't, there's a risk of the tire actually rolling off the rim. If you're in the middle of a race and you don't have the correct adhesive and you don't have a spare tire for your size wheel, the likelihood that a course mechanic is going to have a precise replacement for you is very, very slim. So very slim. So if you're looking at race wheels, do recommend going with a clincher. Yeah.
And on this, so let's focus on this for a second. This is the deepest dish, that's what they say, deep dish. So you can have one that is completely covered over, okay? If you're watching this, I wouldn't advise that, okay? They're dangerous in that they will catch a lot of wind. So this is deep dish, and you can get some that are a little bit less and a little bit less. I don't know all the numbers. Different brands kind of designate it differently, but you got the deep dish and then a little bit less and a little bit less. These are meant to provide some aerodynamic improvements, reduce air drag with air coming in here and making eddies and all sorts of geeky stuff that you don't need to know. Understand that with that comes risk, okay? I have been generally running in a medium dish, and so now I have a deeper dish, and I had never trained with it. I hadn't even really thought about it. So, and then going downhill with crosswinds and whatnot, when you're going 35, maybe mile an hour, the crosswinds, the deeper dish race wheels catch wind more and can be kind of a cray scary experience. And then if you don't have good aero handling or bike handling skills or decent amount of like put together core strength, some races should be non-race wheel allowed. Like NOLA last year was stupid windy, and we saw so many bike wrecks just because of race wheels. Understand that race wheels, while they look sexy and they sound awesome, sometimes you shouldn't race in them.
And I will say, while we're in the thick of this conversation, a lot of the things that we're mentioning by no means are critical for doing well in any type of race. It really is the engine that counts. However, if you are considering race wheels, these are just some good key considerations. The other thing that I wanted to mention specifically is if you are switching from a regular road wheel to a carbon race wheel, you need to be aware that not only are you switching out your wheel, but you also need to switch out the brake pads. If you are, your regular training wheel, that rim is made out of aluminum. And if you look closely at your brake pads, you'll kind of see a shiny surface. That's actually little shards of aluminum that kind of become embedded over time in your brake pads. If you leave those brake pads on and you put a carbon set of wheels on there, that rim is going to be degraded, and there is a potential for that sidewall to combust, and you're out however many thousands or hundreds of dollars that you just dropped on a very nice fancy pair of shoes for your bike. So You know, take the extra $15 and have a designated set of brake pads for your race wheels. Sometimes those brake pads, they're a little bit different composition than the aluminum. However, I do know from experience that if you're in a pinch and you've got a fresh set of aluminum designated brake pads, those can work on your carbon rims. Just be mindful with heat buildup that they're not ideal. Not ideal. So.
Right. On your race wheels, so the another important aspect, so this provides aerodynamic benefits. This in here, this is where you would put a cassette on that we were talking about, but here is what the hub, right? Hub means I got bearings in here and I'm supposed to be smooth and whatnot. So in searching, if you wanted race wheels and in searching for that, I would tend to say don't buy the cheaper, real cheap off-brand unless you really know what you're doing and the website gives you the hub name and the model number, and then you know what that is and that if it translates into a good one or not. While they might be a lot cheaper, they might actually make you slower. If the hub is crap, it's going to rob you of some speeds. So race wheels, you know, you can rent them at races if you wanted to. I wouldn't go super cheap, and just be cognizant of, just because this is where you get what you pay for, and it is what it is. Now, if you were getting, like we just bought, or race wheels versus Zip, if you stay in that ballpark, different kind of major brands, they're kind of all going to be the same, but not some, you know, cheap race wheel that you bought off of Nash Bar or whatever, that, you know, they were made in wherever. Okay. And do know that when you put your race wheels on, you have a rear derailleur that fine tunes how you travel through your 10 speed or your 11 speed. Okay. And you have to buy race wheels. I'm going to say you have to. There's one way where you can go 10 speed to 11 speed or 11 speed to 10 speed, but I'm not going to go through all that, and it's a cluster anyway. So you need to buy race wheels that match up with your bike. If it's a 10 speed, buy 10 speed race wheels, or get an extra cassette that goes on it, or 11 speed and 11 speed. But your derailleur in the back that helps you to smoothly transition and then stop you at the ends of that cassette will need to be fine-tuned a little bit most of the time when you put your race wheels on. While the cassettes might be exactly the same. And here's another thought: if you're going and doing a hilly bike course, and like Coral was saying, if you needed like the bigger cassette, not the compact one, but one that has a wider range of gears, you would want to make sure that your race wheels have that cassette as well. And cassettes are cheap. They're like $30, right? For a good cassette. You could put it on yourself, or it's easy to have your bike shop. The bike shop should almost put these on for you. Mine would. The rear derailleur will need to be adjusted just a smidge. And so you have a fine-tuning little knobby deal on the back of your derailleur, but you can screw it up too. So if you don't know how to do this, take it to your trusted bike shop.
Full disclosure, I take mine to my mechanic every time.
I've done it and I know how to do it, but usually what happens is I turn it, you only have to turn it just a smidge, like quarter of a turn, really.
Like not even.
Always do it the wrong way.
So, now that we've talked about all the finer aspects of race wheels, I do kind of want to pull back a little bit and talk about, obviously you don't, and I've already said this, you don't need race wheels. You don't need a bunch of fancy gear we're talking about like seconds to a couple of few minutes that you're going to save by adding race wheels, getting an aero helmet, etc. So as far as like things that will save you the most time versus, and kind of working down the line of like shaving more and more seconds off,
Saving.
Other than literally shaving your body.
That's why you see the guys with the leg hair.
I think that's more of a road rash thing, just a hunch. But it is. It is.
I never heard that.
Yeah. But really, if you're looking to save the most amount of time and be really efficient, being a little bit lighter, this is physics. Being a little bit lighter is going to save you some time. So just kind of keep that in mind. In my mind, though, also the biggest thing is making sure that you have a fit that, number one, it doesn't matter how aerodynamic you are. If you are not comfortable, you will not stay in that aerodynamic position for very long, which totally negates any aerodynamic setup that you might have. So finding a good balance with your fitter to having a comfortable position that's also reasonably aerodynamic, that's like the number one thing that you want to look for. When you start moving kind of down that progression of other things that you can do to save time, if you're debating, should I get an aero helmet versus race wheels? The first thing that if you're dropping money on these things, aero helmet is going to be more often than not much, much cheaper than buying a pair of race wheels. It is also going to actually you're going to save more time with an aero helmet than you will by utilizing race wheels. So if you've got the awesome fit, you've got the aero helmet, and you still have money left over that you want to throw at a pair of race wheels, by all means, go for it. But, all the aero extras are really not necessary. A lot of it has to do with your fit and how strong the engine is. Making sure you're doing the right training to get all that power out. So
aero helmet and race wheels, really, or we're only talking maybe 10 to 15 minutes saved at Ironman distance. It's not a lot, folks.
So if you're looking sprint to Olympic distance, you're talking 30 seconds to a couple minutes at most. So, right. Yep.
Strength training and dropping some weight would far, far benefit you than all of this stuff, and that's mostly free.
And being a lot, exactly.
Buy more kale.
Don't eat it right before your race, though. Cool. How about staying hydrated?
Oh, this is so important, yo. Okay, so let's assume we're talking about half Ironman distance, okay? How you set your bike up is really important for a number of reasons. For first one, hydration, drinking enough H2O is important, but managing that is important. Bike stations are generally about an hour apart from each other. They do that because you're supposed to be drinking a certain amount of water per hour. Okay, so I prefer, and I couldn't find mine must be in the trunk of the car. I prefer the Aero bottle Profile Designs. I love that company. They build good products. The one that has the straw that sits up and down, I prefer that one, and it has multiple ways of mounting to your aero bars. We have a video on that too as well. I did a hydration management video. We'll make sure to put that in there. The one with the straw that comes out, because you need to be going through one of those bottles an hour. And then when you go through the bike station, it's easy to fill it up, etc. I like that one because you're not reaching behind you. Your attention needs to be on the road. Your attention needs to be managing, staying safe, and keeping everybody else around you safe. I almost ran off. They had repaved the road. And so there was this lip, like, I don't know, it was like 3 inches tall. And I almost ran off of it twice because I was futzing around with something. And I know what I'm doing generally. And I try to pay attention all the time. It's easy to get distracted on the bike. It's easy to, you know, put too much, oh, if I do this, this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, but too much like to do stuff on the bike. It's easy to kind of lose sight of the fact that everything needs to be very manageable, very easy, within reach, right in front of you, to minimize how much you're moving around or turning back, how much time you spend with your eyes not able to look forward, is really important. So I like that one. That's, you know, a lot of people, you'll see them with the double, you know, you get these parts that you can put on your seat post that will hold both 2 bike bottles. Yes, that one. Those should be extra, and preferably, unless you really know what you're doing or you're all by yourself and there's no cars around, those should be managed when you're stopped. Okay. I would not encourage folks to reach around to try to manage that and then to reach around again to put the bottle back there. There is a great potential to screw stuff up, yourself or somebody else, or get hit by a car or whatever. But for long training rides, those are necessary if you can't do loops and stuff like that. There are the torpedo ones that, you know, look kind of like that, and they have a straw coming out. Those are kind of cool.
For front end. We're talking now front end hydration, right. Again. Yeah.
Sorry. Yep. The torpedo ones, they're kind of cool. The idea is cool, but I have found that they're not real consistent on how you mount them on your bike and then bike to bike. And so sometimes they'll sit canted either this way, and then you can't get all the water out of them. Some of them are hard to clean. I don't prefer them, but they're okay. And then you can have like a speed fill. So that would be a kind of like it's a triangle shaped container that you can mount on the, what's between your legs of your bike. Thank you.
Got you.
Yesterday. And then it'll have a, you know, a plastic tubing that comes up, and so you kind of get the same straw idea. And that can be sort of easy to put in, and it can be sort of not easy to put water in. You just need to understand, and I prefer, and I would highly suggest that whatever you do, you know how to manage getting in a bike bottle of water an hour. The speed fill, you don't see it. You can lose track of what the heck you're doing. And as I coach the principles of water, electrolytes, fuel. You could put all of them together if you want, but you need to understand a bike bottle an hour of water. However you're getting that water in. If you're putting fuel in it as well, great. Your electrolytes, how much you're getting, and then your fuel. So how to manage that with consistency, ease of use, consistency, and you know what, you know, how much water you're getting in an hour. So, and then there's the Camelback. You don't need to carry a lot of extra water with you at races, especially if you're doing an Ironman brand race. Lots of people when you're doing an Ironman brand race, you know what you're getting, and most of them are very consistent race to race. So you know that the bike stations are generally 15 to 20 miles apart, about an hour. Refill your bike bottle. Just this needs to be consistent so you can nail that and get those aspects of it nailed down as habit. What did I miss?
I just have two things to add. The first one is, yes, Camelback. If that is the difference between you being able to do a race and not, wear your Camelback. So, I mean, if you're, for instance, say this is your first, season or two doing triathlon, and you've kind of started to venture and get comfortable with reaching down, grabbing a bottle, etc., especially if you're on a road bike that doesn't have aero bars where, that, front end hydration is not an option. From a safety aspect, having a Camelback can be a lot more secure where you're just kind of, reaching down, sucking versus managing a bunch of people traveling around you and having to reach down, grab a bottle, being a little unstable. And I also will say, even in sprint, you do need to take in water or nutrition or whatever fluids on the bike. Otherwise you will become dehydrated, and let's face it, you're probably not going to be able to catch up on the run before you have really, dug yourself into a hole. So if a Camelback can get you in a race and kind of save you on the hydration, highly recommend it. But definitely, if you are continuing in the sport, definitely practice on your training rides, reaching down and getting comfortable having one hand and kind of managing your hydration. Or consider getting aero bars so you can have that front end hydration. The second thing is, if you're doing a longer course race, so like half iron to iron distance, and you're utilizing liquid nutrition, especially if you've got a special mix that you use and you're going to have to mix a couple bottles about halfway through, either stop and do it at special needs. That's actually my biggest recommendation personally, is if you are stopping and you're having to, reorganize stuff, take the extra couple minutes, stop, get reorganized, and then go on your way, rather than trying to do it on the fly with 100 of your, newest, closest friends around. That it can just be super unsafe if you're distracted and trying to manage all that stuff, hit a pothole, and then everybody's race goes to the beans. So just be safe, stay hydrated, and do what works.
We had a comment that one lady was using the speed fill because she didn't have enough room on her aero bars. This is true. The configuration of the road bike, tri bike, it needs some thought put into it. With the concepts of what's going to be consistent, easy, you don't have to think so much about it if you're just doing sprint and Olympic. But it puts some thought into it. This is one of the reasons why I like the Profile Design Aero Bar, because it's a good one. They can be individually mounted. The different sides can be individually mounted onto whatever and adjusted in all these different ways. So you generally get away from room considerations with the aero bottles fitting in between or whatnot. And there's multiple ways of mounting your aero bottle between. They have multiple brackets, either the brackets that fit onto the aero bars themselves, or they have a nice bracket that mounts onto the crossbar that you put all this, what's that bar called, the one that you hold on to when you're up out of your
handlebar.
Yeah, that.
Hey. Somebody did a long triathlon yesterday.
I have a mechanical engineering degree. To tell today. Okay.
Oh man.
So I think only one more thing that we're going to chat about, and this is super, super, uber duper important. Can you tell us about this thing that most of us neglect?
The triathletes are notorious for neglecting that our mechanics really despise us for. Yeah.
Oh,
Bike
yeah.
cleaning, bike cleaning. um, Bike cleaning is actually, it can be intimidating, but the more you do it, one, you're going to extend the life of your components and of your bike by just a whole lot. Plus, it also looks really nice. It makes your bike run better. You can even gain some time by making sure that all of your components are in good, clean working order. So Bonnie did kind of a on the fly bike cleaning video that's on the Triathlon Biking homepage, and we'll link to it also in the Facebook group, as well as in the reporting link that we send out. So definitely check that out. If it's been a while since you've had your bike cleaned, you definitely want to do a deeper clean, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But as far as like tutorial, not gonna obviously show you today, but again, there will be a more in-depth video of just how to get everything looking spick and span. Um, so a couple of things though that you are going to need to really get your bike looking good. Hot water, some soap, a good sponge, and that's just kind of for rubbing everything down. And then if you are wanting to, and you are going to want to do this, clean all of your components. And by components, I'm talking your chain rings, your gearing, your derailleur, all that good stuff. There's a lot of buildup that can occur over time: grease, dirt, grime, etc. So, every so often you're going to want to take what's called a degreaser, and it's going to, you kind of either spray it on or paint it on, depending on the type of bottle you've got. And it just kind of, soaks in, loosens everything up, and then you can go in and wipe it off. You let it dry out, all of your components, and again, I'll show you how to do this in the tutorial video. But then you're going to take what's called a lubricant and re-lube your components. So typically that would be your chain and then a couple of the different adjustment fittings. You don't really need to put lubricant on your gears themselves. It's good to note there are two different main types of lube. There's some specialized ones that you don't really need to be too concerned with, but the two primary types, there's a wet lube for really wet conditions, like say if you live in the Pacific Midwest or the Pacific Northwest rather, or a wet environment like Britain, you're probably going to use a wet lube most of the year. Other places you're just going to use that during your wet season. It holds up a lot better. And then your other one is going to be called a dry lubricant. So if you live in a drier climate or it's just a dry season, you're going to use a dry lube. And that one also kind of helps repel dirt. But the thing about a dry lubricant is that it breaks down more easily. So, every couple of 100 miles, you're going to want to reapply your dry lubricant. Bonnie, what am I missing?
They have lubricant cleaning solution that comes in both. That's what I used for quick fix. That's what I take to races. I like to clean my bike either on a bike stand or on my bike rack, on like your car or whatever, so you can move parts around. Having lots of rags is nice. I like to use a toothbrush when I get super anal with my chain. you can take stuff apart if you want to, if you know how to put it back together without jacking anything up.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that. But
Yeah.
dude, not keeping your bike clean wears stuff out, and it's not good. And you, yes, thank you, Tracy. Yes, wearing rubber gloves is good.
Yep.
I know a particular someone that I had to force to change her tire over and over again. Oh my gosh, it's so funny. I
Grease
totally wish
monkey.
I would have. Yeah, she had a white bike too. She'd get grease everywhere, like everywhere. And so when you're cleaning the bike, if you have grease and stuff on your bike, like on the pretty letters and stuff, you can use that degreaser or this. I use the combo cleaner greaser together, and you can get a clean rag and use that to clean a lot of stuff off your bike.
Mm-hmm.
Keep your bike clean and pretty.
Yeah.
You need to name your bike and then treat it like your baby, and then that will fix all of this stuff. You'll be like, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
The last consideration as far as cleaning your bike goes, you can hose it down. You can. I hose my bike down. It's typically good. If your bike is pretty grimy, before you start rubbing on it with a sponge, it is a good idea to just kind of spray it off lightly to get hopefully the bulk of sand, grime, dirt out of the way and off your bike before you start rubbing on it. It kind of becomes if you don't do that, it can kind of have a sandpaper effect on your bike frame, which is no good. The other consideration is really try not to use a high-powered hose mechanism. It can get into bearings, housings, etc., that have grease inside of them, and it can explode.
I'm not helping.
The grease
Blowout.
can blow out of these small spaces that really need the grease inside of them. We're not even going to search for what that word was going to be. And then the other thing too, it can also kind of jack
the word in my head.
Expulse. That's not a word. We're just going to leave that one alone. But yeah, just high-powered wash is you're typically a good thing to stay away from. It can make your not using it can make your components last a lot longer and save you some maintenance hassle. So
there was a question on having a bike fit and the arms still hurting. My philosophy is there is going to be some adjustment period, and I think it should only last maybe a week or two. But you do need to recognize that core work can save your bacon on a lot of some of this stuff. If you're really weak in the core, that can make this worse.
And neck strength.
Oh yeah.
And neck strength.
Yeah. And appropriately moving your neck right, not sighting, but yes, sighting right.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're having continued pain here, and if it's pronounced pain, it's not a good. They need to alleviate that. It's either too aggressive or whatnot, because you can get a more aggressive fit, and then you're putting a lot more weight on your arms. You can ease up that fit. It might take some post extenders or this or that or that or this. But that's what I'm talking about, a good bike fit and stuff like that. There's kind of a line where, yeah, you need to adjust a smidge, but if it's severe pain, and if you're saying that, how long you've been going on with this, and then you don't want to ride, that's a problem.
Something's off.
So, if it's happened 5 to 10 minutes, if it's post a couple of weeks, take it back and say, I need less weight on my arms, period. Mm-hmm. You should raise the post up and whatnot. That's pretty easy to do.
Yeah. So cool. I think that's a wrap for this evening.
Sorry guys, a little bit long, but this is a big.
It is. So If anybody has any questions, feel free to contact us. And also, super exciting perk if you are a newcomer
Yes.
and you're interested in taking advantage of a free trial for a month of coaching, feel free to give us a shout. So you can either Facebook message Bonnie or me, I'm Coral Owen, for details on how to get that going, or you can just email us at bravingkarma@gmail.com.
Yes.
So I'm really glad everybody showed up. Hopefully you learned something. Thanks for the good questions. And we'll see you on the flip side.
Yep. Have a great day, guys.
Yep. Have a great week.
So my bling from yesterday's effort. Ta-da!
Yay!
And then I thought you would enjoy this. Sniff.
My favorite.
And then I painted this today.
That's awesome. Was that a local place in Boulder?
Yeah. You know that whole paint and drink thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm a fan of the painting. Just the painting part.
Just the painting, I'm sure.